the shadow of the Mediterranean sun, where the waves whispered secrets to the ancient shores of North Africa, stood Carthage, a city of unparalleled splendor, its harbors teeming with ships from distant lands, carrying spices, silks, and slaves. Founded by Phoenician exiles centuries before, it had risen from a modest trading post to a maritime empire that dominated the western seas, challenging even the might of Rome. But as the year 149 BC dawned, an invisible storm gathered on the horizon, one that would erase this beacon of civilization from the map. The air in Carthage was thick with the scent of olive oil and incense, markets alive with the clamor of merchants haggling in Punic tongues, while children played amid the grand temples dedicated to Baal and Tanit. No one yet felt the chill of impending doom, for the city pulsed with vitality, its walls a testament to enduring strength. Yet, deep within the Senate halls, whispers of Roman envy began to stir, subtle at first, like the faint tremor before an earthquake. The people went about their routines, unaware that the threads of fate were unraveling, pulling them toward a cataclysm that would redefine history. The collapse did not announce itself with thunder. It crept in through the cracks of complacency, as empires often do. Carthage's origins traced back to the legendary Queen Dido, who, fleeing tyranny in Tyre, tricked local Berber kings into granting her land enough to cover with an ox hide, cleverly slicing it into strips to encircle a hill. From this cunning foundation, the city blossomed into a hub of innovation, its engineers crafting aqueducts that channeled fresh water from distant mountains, sustaining a population of hundreds of thousands. The streets echoed with the rhythmic pounding of hammers in shipyards, where massive quinquiremes were built, their oars slicing through waves like knives through flesh. Temples rose majestically, adorned with gold and ivory, where priests offered child sacrifices to appease the gods, the smoke rising in solemn curls against the azure sky. Trade routes extended like veins across the known world, from Iberian silver mines to Egyptian grain fields, enriching the elite with villas overlooking the sea. Their mosaics depicting heroic tales of Hannibal's elephants crossing the Alps. Society was stratified yet fluid, with merchants ascending to power through wealth, while slaves toiled in the fields under the relentless sun. The air carried the salty temps of the harbor, mixed with the aroma of baking bread and roasting meats from communal feasts. But beneath this prosperity, the scars of past wars lingered, unhealed wounds from defeats at Roman hands that festered quietly, waiting for the right moment to reopen. Daily life in Carthage revolved around the bustling Byrsa citadel, a fortified hilltop where the Council of Elders convened amid marble columns, debating policies that balanced commerce and conquest. Families gathered at dawn in modest homes of sun-baked brick, sharing meals of barley porridge flavored with dates and honey, the laughter of children mingling with the calls of seagulls overhead. Women wove intricate tapestries in shaded courtyards, their fingers deftly threading stories of mythic voices, while men ventured to the agora, where exotic goods from sub-Saharan Africa, ivory tusks, and ostrich feathers changed hands amid fervent negotiations. The rhythm of the city was dictated by the tides, with fishermen casting nets at first light, their boats bobbing like corks on the glittering water, returning with hauls of tuna and mackerel to feed the masses. Religious processions wound through narrow alleys, drums beating a hypnotic cadence as devotees chanted hymns to Melkart, the protector god, their voices rising in eerie harmony. Evenings brought respite in public baths, steam-filled chambers where whispers of gossip flowed as freely as the water, tales of distant travels and local intrigues. Yet, in these moments of normalcy, no one paused to notice the subtle shifts, the increasing patrols along the borders, the hushed conversations about Roman spies infiltrating the ports. The collapse began not with invasion, but with the erosion of trust, silent and insidious. Early warning signs emerged like faint cracks in a dam, imperceptible to most, but ominous to the astute. After the humiliating defeat in the Second Punic War, Carthage had been stripped of its fleet and forced to pay crushing indemnities to Rome, a yoke that chafed against their proud spirit. The fields, once lush with wheat and vines, now bore the weight of reparations. Farmers toiling longer hours under a sun that seemed harsher, their harvests diverted to foreign coffers. Whispers circulated in the taverns about Roman senators, like Cato the Elder, who ended every speech with Carthago delenda, Yes, Carthage must be destroyed, his words carried by traders like poison on the wind. Border skirmishes with Numidian allies, encouraged by Roman intrigue, escalated quietly, drawing Carthaginian forces into defensive postures that drained resources. The Senate debated in low tones, the chamber filled with the scent of myrrh and tension, as envoys returned from Rome with demands that grew ever more unreasonable. Merchants noticed fewer ships docking, trade routes disrupted by unseen blockades, the once vibrant harbors falling into unusual silences at dusk. Families felt the pinch in rising prices, bread becoming a luxury as granaries emptied. But the people dismissed these as temporary woes, clinging to memories of past glories, blind to the gathering shadows. By the time the signs sharpened, the machinery of fate was already in motion, irreversible and unforgiving. Rising tension gripped Carthage like a vice slowly tightening, as Roman ambitions cast longer shadows over the African coast. The city had rebuilt remarkably after Zama, its economy surging through agricultural reforms and new alliances. Olive groves expanding across the hinterlands, their silver leaves rustling in breezes that carried hints of unease. Yet, Rome's Senate viewed this resurgence with paranoia, fabricating pretexts for conflict, accusing Carthage of violating treaties by arming against Numidian raids. Diplomatic missions shuttled across the sea, Carthaginian ambassadors pleading in marble halls of the Eternal City, their voices echoing against walls indifferent to reason. Back home, the streets buzzed with rumors, the air thick with the acrid smell of forges working overtime, crafting weapons in secret defiance. Festivals, once joyous, now held an undercurrent of anxiety. Masks hiding fearful eyes, as priests interpreted omens from sacrificial entrails. Dark portents of blood and fire, the elite hoarded gold in hidden vaults, while the poor whispered of uprisings. The social fabric, straining under economic pressures. No one slept soundly, dreams haunted by visions of Roman legions marching inexorably southward. The ellapse whispered its approach through these fractures, building pressure like steam in a sealed vessel, ready to explode. Key decisions sealed Carthage's fate in the dim-lit chambers of power, where leaders grappled with impossible choices. Faced with Roman ultimatums to disband their military and surrender the Senate wavered, the air heavy with the scent of parchment and ink as decrees were drafted. Hasdrubal, the commander, urged resistance, his voice resonant amid the assembly, but moderates prevailed at first, opting for appeasement to buy time. Weapons were piled in public squares, flames consuming swords and shields in a spectacle meant to demonstrate submission. The crackling fires, illuminating faces, etched with doubt. Yet, when Rome demanded the city relocate inland, abandoning their seafaring heritage, outrage erupted like a dam bursting. The people, stirred by orators in the forum, rejected the terms, the roar of the crowd drowning out the distant thunder of approaching doom. In haste, they rearmed, women donating jewelry to fund forges, the clang of hammers echoing through nights that grew colder. These mistakes, initial compliance, followed by desperate rebellion, played into Roman hands, justifying the invasion that loomed. But no one understood the full gravity then, as decisions cascaded like falling dominoes toward inevitable ruin. The moment the system began to fail arrived with the Roman fleet's silhouette on the horizon, a dark omen slicing through the dawn mist. Consul Manius Manilius landed troops unopposed at first, the beaches silent save for the crash of waves and the distant cries of alarmed sentries. Carthage's defenses, weakened by prior crumbled under the initial assaults, gates creaking open to chaos as soldiers poured in, the air filled with the metallic temps of blood and the acrid smoke of burning homes, screams piercing the once tranquil mornings. Supply lines faltered almost immediately, granaries raided by besiegers, leaving the populace to ration meager scraps amid growing desperation. Leaders scrambled in the citadel, orders barked in frantic Punic, but coordination frayed as panic spread like wildfire. The harbors, symbols of Carthaginian might, became traps. Ships scuttled to block enemy advances, their masts sinking like drowned giants. In those initial hours, the illusion of invincibility shattered, replaced by the harsh reality of vulnerability. The collapse accelerated, no longer a distant threat, but a living nightmare unfolding in the streets, where routine dissolved into survival. Human consequences unfolded in harrowing waves. As the siege tightened its grip on Carthage's throat, families huddled in basements, the air stale with fear and unwashed bodies, children whimpering in the darkness as artillery thundered overhead, stones crashing through roofs like divine judgment. Starvation gnawed at the populace, once plump faces hollowing, eyes glazing with hunger as rats became delicacies scavenged from sewers. Disease slithered through the crowded quarters, fevers claiming the weak, the stench of decay permeating every alley. Women, driven by desperation, joined the fray, hurling tiles from rooftops onto Roman invaders, their cries mingling with the clash of swords. Slaves revolted in the confusion, turning on masters in bloody reprisals, adding internal strife to external assault. The temples, once sanctuaries, became more. Bodies piled high amid flickering lamps, priests murmuring final rites over the dying. Amid this horror, acts of heroism, emerged defenders holding barricades with makeshift weapons, their blood soaking the earth that had nurtured their ancestors. Yet, the toll mounted relentlessly, eroding the human spirit, transforming a vibrant society into a ghost of itself. Social breakdown accelerated as the siege dragged on, fracturing the bonds that held Carthage together. Neighbor turned against neighbor in the scramble for resources, fists flying over loaves of moldy bread, the one civil discourse devolving into primal snark. The elite fled to fortified enclaves, abandoning the masses to fate, their opulent villas becoming islands amid rising chaos. Religious fervor twisted into fanaticism, with mass sacrifices resuming in desperate bids for divine intervention, the wails of victims echoing through smoke-choked skies. Gangs roamed the ruins, looting abandoned homes, the crack of whips and shouts of pursuit replacing the hum of daily commerce. Communication collapsed, rumors spreading like plagues, fueling paranoia that sapped morale. The air hung heavy with despair, punctuated by the distant rumble of Roman siege engines, each impact shaking the foundations of trust and order. In this maelstrom, identity itself unraveled Punic pride, giving way to survival instincts, as the city that had withstood Hannibal's era now teetered on oblivion's edge. The collapse revealed humanity's fragility, stripping away civility to expose the raw underbelly of fear. The long-term historical impact rippled outward from Carthage's ashes, reshaping the Mediterranean world in Rome's image. With the city razed and its soil salted to prevent rebirth, Rome's dominance went unchallenged, paving the way for imperial expansion that swallowed Greece, Egypt, and beyond. The loss of Carthaginian knowledge, advanced navigation, agriculture, and engineering created voids filled by Roman adaptations, altering trade patterns and cultural exchanges. Berber tribes, once allies, fragmented into kingdoms that would later fuel conflicts, their lands scarred by the war's devastation. The destruction echoed in literature, inspiring Virgil's Aeneid, where Dido's curse foretold eternal enmity, a narrative that influenced Western thought for millennia. Economically, Rome's coffers swelled with spoils, funding aqueducts and colosseums, but at the cost of moral decay, as unchecked power bred corruption. The fall marked a shift from rival city-states to monolithic empire, setting precedents for future conquests. Yet, fragments of Carthage endured in ruins, unearthed centuries later, reminding scholars of lost grandeur. The event's shadow loomed over history, a cautionary tale of hubris and rivalry. In the quiet aftermath, where only winds swept over the rubble of what was once a thriving metropolis, the story of Carthage lingers as a haunting whisper through time. The seas that carried its merchants now lap at empty shores, the gods it worshipped silenced forever. This collapse, born of envy and ambition, underscores how civilizations, no matter how mighty, are built on fragile foundations susceptible to the slow creep of decline. As empires rise and fall, the echoes of Carthage serve as a somber reflection on the impermanence of power, urging us to heed the subtle warnings before they swell into irreversible tides.